For those of you coming on board, we're super happy to have you. I'm Arlene Stein, and we're going to be talking today to my good friend, Rebecca Mackenzie. She's one of my favorite travel companions, and unfortunately, seemingly going to be stuck continents apart for some time. So looking forward to that moment when we can share a travel food experience again. But in the meantime, we're just going to chill out in our Zoom rooms and try to connect this way. At least I get to see your wonderful face. We've known each other for over a decade, and we've traveled to many, many different destinations. I hate to put you on the spot about this, but what was your favorite travel time with me?
Okay, well, that's completely unfair, Arlene, because there's just simply way too many. And in fact, we've been friends, fast and furious friends for over 15 years. But I think probably one of my all-time favorite memories was our very first trip that we took together when we went to Italy for Terra Madre. And, just such an incredible experience to not only go to a different country to experience their food culture, but go with so many fellow Canadians who were passionate about our terroir in Canada. And it was a great adventure. It was super fun.
Anyways, it was the beginning of a wonderful line of adventures for the two of us. But let's start digging into a little bit of your history. So for people who aren't familiar, you are a very intrepid traveler. You've been to over 45 countries in the world, but your wanderlust started quite young. So give us a little synopsis of why travel, why food, and what got you to where you are in your career.
Sure. So I was very privileged to have an opportunity to spend my last year of high school going to a program called. So I actually traveled to over 20 countries in 4.5 months on a tall ship that left from Copenhagen, Denmark in the middle of August and finished off in Cape Town, South Africa 4.5 months later. What's interesting is when I left Toronto, my hometown, I was a very picky eater. There was no adventure in my palate whatsoever. And I became, through my travels, someone who really, really appreciated food from a different perspective. And it was primarily because of how it connected me to the cultures that I experienced on my travels. Once I got home, I moved out to BC, moved to the Okanagan, had a pretty interesting career path there. Ski bum is not a lucrative career, just as an FYI, super fun. But I also worked in the agricultural sector a bit out there, and I returned to Ontario to a small community called Prince Edward County. Certainly has become more popular in the recent, or I guess in the past decade, as one of the wine regions in Ontario. When I moved there, I was in my early 20s. Unlike many people my age who were fleeing the community, going to urban centers, I actually decided to stay there and invest in a small business. It was my first and only sort of entrepreneurial endeavor. I had a gourmet Canadian food gift shop in the first fruit winery in Prince Edward County, which is the County Cider Company. And what was really interesting about that journey was I was one of many seasonal business operators trying to make 12 months of the year income on June, July, and August. And in my first year of business, I had extreme success. I actually managed to pay off a 3-year business loan in about 6 months. But during the winter, there was 100 of us entrepreneurs in small business across the food tourism value chain, which I'll speak to in a minute, that got together and went, we need to figure out how we can start working better together so that we can strengthen the year-round economy and figure out how to expand our season. And in doing so, we were able to access some funding from our provincial Ministry of Agriculture through their Rural Economic Development Fund. And we started an initiative called Taste the County, which I ended up volunteering for. And then very quickly the next spring sold my business and actually took to running what became a not-for-profit organization and ran it for 10 years. And we managed to grow the economy of Prince Edward County from about 6 million annually to 20 million by specifically bringing together the businesses in agriculture and fisheries with tourism and hospitality, never promoting the summer, but talking about and showcasing our shoulder seasons. And from there, I got involved with the provincial food tourism strategy. And back in 2008, I joined the Culinary Tourism Alliance as their president CEO. And it's just been a long incredible journey. Since then, it actually sometimes feels like it was just yesterday, and then other times it feels like it's been about 40 years that I've been doing this. And I would say that I've been through several different really challenging times for the tourism and hospitality sector, including 9/11 and SARS. And right now, this is knocking it out of the park.
Well, we're going to touch on COVID a little bit later in the conversation, but first, a little bit more background. You, as you said, started at what was at the time the Ontario Culinary Tourism Alliance. It was food tourism strategy for the province. You've subsequently, over the last decade, not only fulfilled your mission in that strategy, but actually gone global in many ways. You are recognized as a global food tourism expert. For people who aren't so familiar with the term, explain to us what it is, but more importantly, explain to us why it's important for local food economies.
Food tourism is any experience where a consumer can have a taste or taste of place of a product or ingredient that reflects the terroir or the miroir of a destination. So really the ingredients that reflect the lands, lakes, rivers, or oceans of a destination, and then how that is interpreted either through an on-farm experience, a pick your own operation, an agritourism experience, right through to farmers markets. I mean, those are some of the most incredible experiences a visitor can have in a destination, because it really connects them to the people of a community and the people who protect and value the land. It's everything from food trucks to fine dining from a restaurant perspective. It's also through the lens of attractions that may have a food and beverage offering or a taste education experience, festivals, events, culinary tours. So, one of the really interesting things about food tourism is it really is shows where food connects us all. And it's where we come together with a destination and really understand their communities and some of their cultural nuances. We've seen culinary tourism, and also referred to as food tourism, also referred to as gastronomic tourism, as a sector of tourism growing over the last decade. And the United Nations World Tourism Organization has actually actively invested in gastronomic tourism for more than 5 years now. And they recognize that 88% of destinations consider food a strategic element in defining their brand and their destination. I think what's key, and the reason why more and more destinations are investing in properly developing food tourism, is that it does contribute to the intangible heritage, and it is an important point of differentiation. It also attracts visitors that spend more and will spread their benefits across the value chain. It offers a great economic development opportunity for less visited destinations. It can help small scale producers to diversify their revenues, which is a key importance also when you look at food security. It connects visitors' emotions and provides meaningful experiences. And it also creates visitor loyalty. So there's many different reasons to get behind it. The challenge is always working with destinations who quickly will think it's a marketing activity as opposed to a community development activity, which it is. There is definitely the reason why we've grown from the borders of Ontario and service destinations nationally and internationally is there is a very strategic approach to doing this well and being very mindful in the development process.
One of the things I keep hearing people talk about, and this comes up again and again, and it's more of a industry terminology, this idea of value chain, because it depersonalizes it. But you also talked about community, and explain to us all the actors in that value chain and why they're significant to making sure everybody's successful.
I believe that we have all recognized, especially in this current situation, how interconnected we are, and that when I say the food tourism value chain, it's the system in which a consumer can connect with the destination's food and food culture. So when we're talking about all of the pieces that link together, it's very significant. So when we think about farms, we don't just think about an on-farm experience. We look and see, does that farm engage in and participate in farmers markets? Do they sell direct to food service? We're seeing a ton of farmers right now shift direct to grocery and doing more cooperative and collective efforts, because there's been a significant increase in Canadian consumption of locally grown and raised ingredients. So that's one element. We also look at farmers markets as an example through the lens of, are they a market that is completely focused on selling ingredients that are grown and raised within their geographic region, or is it a market that's more like a public market that is a reseller of goods? So there is a differentiation, because one has a much greater impact to the local economy than the other. I think that the key when we look across all of the businesses, so I'll give you a great example of two of our largest attractions in the province. One is Niagara Falls, Niagara Parks, and the other one is the CN Tower. And both of those attractions feed millions of people every year, millions, and they have multiple food service operations within them. We've worked with both of those attractions to get them certified in a program that we developed in Ontario called Feast On, a certified taste of Ontario, where the food service operators, in order to achieve that certification, have to go through a proof of procurement process to show their annual commitment to Ontario grown and raised ingredients. And if they're licensed, an annual procurement from our Vintner Quality Alliance wine, Ontario craft cider, and Ontario spirits. So what's fascinating is these attractions have recognized that their role is not just to feed people. Their role is to inform the consumer what is Ontario's taste of place, and do that in a way with an enormous amount of pride. So within that context, they absolutely are part of our value chain. And their economic impact, because of the choice to get certified and actually use the certification as a tool to do better every year and to increase their procurement, has a massive impact on the local economy.
Okay, so COVID hits, boom. You're actually working across an intersection of all of the worst hit sectors: travel, hospitality, food, agriculture. What's the state of things in Canada, and what are you doing to kind of help support some kind of pivot plan and a projection of how to get out of this situation?
I decided to come up with a game where every time you say the word pivot, you have to buy a bottle of VQA wine. And this is to help encourage more Ontarians to get behind our wine industry and stock their wine cellars. So I'll be saying pivot a lot, but only because I'm doing it to help the wine industry. But joking aside, I am looking for a new word to take over that. I'm also looking forward to a time when my entire days aren't consumed by Zoom calls, because certainly 8 weeks ago, I think when we went into shutdown here in Ontario, I don't believe any of us really actually thought it would go on this long. I don't think globally we really comprehended the impact that this situation was going to have. We know that over 72% of countries globally have closed their borders to tourists. And in some cases, it's not just closing borders to tourists to protect their own, but it is quite literally for many a question of, when borders do open, will people want visitors from other destinations? So there's so much fear. In fact, the fear is real, and it's growing. It seems to be growing even more so as we're looking at partial reopenings. And I don't believe that in my lifetime I've ever experienced so much gray. And I am very much a black and white person. You know me so well. I'm like, tell me like it is. Tell me what I need to do and I'll get there. And literally, we have gotten behind plans and decided to do different programs. And literally within 24 hours of announcing them, the government makes another announcement that makes us start all over again. We do know that 1 of 12 people globally are employed by the tourism sector. Many of those are in small to micro businesses, and they will be lucky to make it through this if they can. Many of them are run by women. So, this pandemic is really going to set many people back, and it's going to unravel some of the successes that the Sustainable Development Goals have achieved in the last decade. I think the challenge that we're all faced with is, when will we go back to the new norm, right? Which will have so many different protocols in place, and likely be things that we'll need to continue to do as, as a fear of a different pandemic could arise.
Well, I think we also have to be constantly on our toes in terms of how to manage this moving forward. I mean, it's kind of shocking given the fact that we've gone through this in other parts of the globe, and in Toronto, we had SARS in Toronto, that we didn't have more preparedness. Tell me, in your opinion, what you think we've learned from this that we can actually use to our advantage to actually help support a better, more resilient future for our economies.
Well, I think the learning is in progress. So, you asked me what I was doing right now. So in addition to, working on a culinary tourism COVID recovery plan to be implemented provincially, and engaging stakeholders from all of our value chain, our food tourism value chain, to be part of developing that, our Minister of Tourism, Culture, Heritage and Sport, yes, that's a mouthful, it's a big ministry, she has actually developed 15 task forces to help her really try to figure out what the path is moving forward. Because the good thing that has come out of this is that the government has realized how interconnected everything is. And in fact, so many other ministries govern elements of business that are directly impacted from this, so the tourism and hospitality sector, but it's not the Ministry of Tourism that creates those policies or regulations. So by bringing the minister up to speed and aware of all of the challenges that the industry is currently facing and will face in a staggered approach to reopening, it is a good thing, because what it's doing is it is helping to see that this is a whole system, and the interconnectedness of this and the ripple effect. With tourism and hospitality being one of the first sectors of the economy to close down, it will likely be the last to reopen properly. And another benefit, or I guess if you can say it's a benefit of this, is it's really forcing us to work collaboratively, which is something you and I, that's our middle name, is collaboration. But for many businesses in many sectors, they stay very isolated within their goals and objectives, and often don't even really consider working collaboratively, because they perceive that their differences are too big. And I think what is come to light is that actually that's not the case. A lot of us have the exact same challenges, and have different policies and regulations that do cross from sector to sector within the value chain, if you will.
Well, it's going to be one of my questions, because of course collaboration is the theme for the Terroir Symposium this year. So are we good collaborators as Canadians? Are we good collaborators globally? How can we be better? What are the inspirational stories that you're seeing? If you can give us a couple of examples of why it's important and how it benefits us all.
So you know this, but the audience doesn't. I'm actually working on a Master of Arts in Global Leadership right now in my spare time. I started the program last fall at Royal Roads University, and it's actually quite interesting that, excuse me while I just, allergies. It's quite interesting because the course that I'm taking this semester is very, very focused on international organizations and global leadership, and collaboration is critical in this time. And I have several really great examples, but what it really is those that are willing to innovate and collaborate will be resilient. And if you can let go of ego and control, and goodness knows we don't have a whole lot of control right now, so many great things can come of it. I know there's one small restaurant in Northern Ontario that was trying to figure out how to help a school food program because they recognized that, with school closures, a lot of the kids that got their one healthy meal a day through school programs weren't getting them. So they created a whole program to provide lunches for kids in the community who otherwise, you know, it was questionable what kind of food they would be getting at home. These are kids that are living in homes that, you know, are at the poverty level. And we also had some issues here with the milk industry, with dumping of milk, largely associated with the processing facilities or lack thereof to get the fresh product utilized in time. And so this chef actually, restaurant worked with a local dairy and included milk in the lunches. So not only was it repurposing a product to make sure it was not going to waste, but it was also really taking care of community. And that, I don't know that that partnership or that collaboration would have happened in a different circumstance, you know? This is the thing that people are, for those people that can get outside of themselves and see what else needs to be done and how they can help, it will change, it will be the change that we need to see. You and I have this discussion often about how, you know, the industry, not just hospitality, but tourism is broken, and not really sure it should ever return to what it was. And I'm not really sure when and if that will return to that time. You know, I've been doing a lot of research, and, you know, I just read an article yesterday that the International Air Transport Association estimates the average ticket price of a flight will go up 43%.
It's going to make it very hard for a lot of us to continue to travel the way we once did. I want to point and make note of your backdrop there, Rebecca, because two things that I know are very important to you: adventure and friendships. And so that's representation of all of those things. You probably traveled more, you increasingly travel more and more every year. This year, obviously, it's put a big damper on it for all of us. What's your thoughts on what the travel is going to look like, not just from it's going to be more expensive from a industry point of view, but what's the consumer going to be looking for moving forward? Are they going to want to get on 15 more planes as soon as they can, or are they going to be looking for a different kind of experience?
First and foremost, globally recognizes that global travel organizations recognize that consumers are going to want to reconnect with family and friends right away, and that a localized market is going to be the primary focus for many destinations as they reopen and they relaunch. I think the appetite, pun intended, is going to be about supporting local restaurants and local experiences. And then as consumers begin to feel safe and see the different business operators offering safe solutions for travel, they'll go further abroad. You know, we are in the process of developing the Great Taste of Ontario road trip to really focus on getting consumers out to enjoy all of the taste of place experiences Ontario has to offer. It's questionable whether forecasting is basic. From what I can see, we're looking at not returning to domestic travel numbers here in Canada till likely summer of 2022. Yeah, you're muted again, just as a heads up, because I can see you go, wow, but I can't hear you.
I'm supposed to be muted.
Okay. I would say that the democratization of travel is going to be taking an uncomfortable step backwards. I think the divide between the haves and the have-nots will get bigger in this situation, unfortunately, as the cost of travel gets higher and should be, you know, to cover the true cost of the impact of travel. However, you know, I think that's why local economies really do need to focus on their own tourism strategies to get more of their own people moving within their destinations and bring back that localized piece. You know, there's been some really great articles that have shown the impact of some of the fine dining establishments now having the capacity to welcome locals and what that's done for them. Is it a different model from a pricing perspective? Absolutely. But could it be one that's still economically viable? That's to be determined, right?
Well, one of the things that I do worry about in this closing of borders is the radicalization again of nation building that we have seen in previous periods of history. by shutting down those borders, do you think there'll be a negative impact in terms of how we view and how we interact globally?
That is remains to be seen, because really it's also about how people welcome visitors, which we of course can't control. So if we as a society feel comfortable that there's measures in place that when people start moving around, regardless of where they're coming from, it's being done safely, and there's a messaging around that, and there's an attitude around that from leadership, then I believe we will be okay. It's when we have poor leadership, poor communications, when we as a society don't feel safe, that's when you get into seeing behaviors that will not encourage people to come and visit. And you know, I think there's such a high level of anxiety right now for so many, that it's about protecting themselves. And you know, it really, it's tough right now because you don't know who to believe, you don't know where to turn to, right? There's just every time you turn around, there's a different story, a different opinion. You know, it's precarious times.
What's the most inspirational thing you've taken away from this for yourself, and what are your hopes for the positive for the future?
I am always optimistic. However, I'm also very realistic. I think for me, the positives, I'm really, really thankful. I have an amazing team that I work with, and they've done a really great job working from home. And so we've proven to ourselves that regardless of how we work really well together. And the work that we do at the Culinary Tourism Alliance is really, really meaningful. I'd encourage everybody to go check out our brand new industry website we just launched quietly, culinarytourismalliance.com. What I am thankful for is how many people have reached out and how many people are excited about collaborating. And you know, that for me gives me hope for humanity. It's been a really hard time for me for the last 8 weeks because I haven't been with my kids. They've been with my ex-husband in the country, which is the best place for them. But that for me has made me realize that coming out of this, I need to make sure that I make more time, as much time as they will let me, to be with them. And, you know, I will never, ever take for granted a hug again. And anybody who knows me, be prepared that when I see you next, like at least 5 minutes, super strong.
Well, I'm dying for my hug from you. Want to just give a plug to Sister Fearless, your girl, Landon Logie, who will be doing an Insta chat this afternoon with Albert Ponzo, who's been a longtime friend of Terroir. And also talk to you about the Terroir Symposium, which we've postponed until September, but wondering if you can give us any updates. Your team's been managing the program for 3 years now, and just wondering if you can give us any hints in terms of what we can look forward to then.
So yes, Landon Logie she is amazing. She's our events manager, and Landon has been doing a ton of research to sort of see how conferences and meetings and symposiums are managing through all of this change right now. We will have a very big announcement next week. We're very excited about it. I think anybody who's attended Terroir previously in person will be really pleased with it. But I can give a little hint that for those that might not have been able to travel to Toronto in September, there's going to be a way you'll be able to join us anyways. So I'm just planting that little seed. And yeah, I'm really grateful for the team that have come up with some really great and engaging ways of staying connected with our larger community, and want to thank you for everything that you've been doing, both through the webinars and the Insta chats and interviews. They've been really uplifting and helped to keep our community connected.
Thank you so much for your time today. Do you have anything else you want to say? We don't have any questions from our panelists, but do you have anything, final words that you want to say?
I think just try to stay as positive as you can, and be as empathetic as possible. Everybody is suffering. Many people are suffering just differently. And this is the time for a paradigm shift. We need to come up with ways to ensure that there is equitable balance across our societies. And this is now the time to actually make some really, I think, positive changes. But it will take a movement of people agreeing on that. So, get involved and be a part of that change.
Well, again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's always lovely to chat with you. We'll chat offline again soon. And thanks, darling.
Thank you. Bye.